If you want to know how to set up and calibrate your table saw to get accurate, precise results almost every time, then this is the video for you. Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Alex, an amateur woodworker from the UK, and today I'm going to be setting up and calibrating my SawStop Compact Table Saw. It's a well-known fact that table saws are a super versatile tool that can unlock a lot of possibilities within a workshop for woodworking and DIY projects. However, they give their best results when they're set up and calibrated properly. I've just moved house into a new workshop, and that means that it's highly likely this saw will have got bumped about during the move and things may have been knocked a little bit out of position. But it's not just house moves. Quite often any table saw you buy that comes out of a box may not necessarily be perfectly calibrated and might require a little bit of work to get the best results. An improperly set up table saw at best will produce inaccurate results and could ruin a woodworking project, and at worst could cause dangerous things like binding and kickback to occur, which could cause injury. Now, I'm no expert by any means, and I'm just going to be sharing the process I use to set up my table saw. But if you do want to follow along or set up your own table saw, make sure to check your manufacturer's instruction and follow their professional guidance. I'm going to set my table saw up in 3 distinct steps. First, I'm going to set the blade angle. Then I'm going to align the blade to my miter slots. And then finally, I'm going to ensure my fence is parallel. Throughout this video, I'll be listing off windows of tolerance that I'm willing to accept. I've got these from Google and from my manufacturer's instructions. If you're going to do the same with your table saw, again, refer to your user guide to check what the acceptable tolerance levels are. Before I get started today though, I'm going to do what I always do when I'm doing any work on any of my power tools, and I'm going to make sure it's switched off and unplugged. That way I know that there's no way this machine can accidentally start whilst I'm near the dangerous parts. The tools I'm going to use today are a digital angle finder, a set of calipers, and a dial indicator, along with a Phillips screwdriver. I do also occasionally like to use a metal square, and I'm told that you can do a lot of these methods using a combination square if you haven't got a dial indicator, but I prefer to use one because I have one. Right, let's get on with it. The first thing I'm going to do before I get started is grab a level and just check that my throat plate is nice and flat and flush with the rest of the table saw. It's not necessarily a step in setting the table saw up, but because I've just moved house, there's a chance this could have been knocked about and come a little bit out of alignment. With that done, I'm on to step 1, setting the blade angle. I'm going to raise the blade all the way up, and then using a digital angle finder, place that on the flat surface of my table saw and zero it. Then I'm going to place the magnetic strip on my blade and check that it is at a true 90 degrees. One of the cool features about the saw I currently own is it has a micro adjust feature where I can make really minuscule little adjustments just to dial in that perfect angle. Once I've got that done, I'm ready to move on to step number 2, aligning the blade to the miter slots. The reason I want to align the blade to the miter slot is because if it's not parallel to that miter slot, it could cause an inaccurate cut, but also it increases the risk of binding and potentially kickback, which is a scenario I just don't want to have occur when I'm working in an enclosed space. To align the blade to the miter slot, all I'm going to do is take a black marker pen and make a simple dot on my table saw blade, making sure that it's on a flat part of the blade and not one of the teeth, as those go off at different angles. Then I'm going to grab my dial indicator, run it into my T-track and adjust it till it sits snugly and can slide, but without any movement left or right. I'm then going to extend the dial indicator out so it's just touching on the blade and set that to my 0 point. Next, I'm going to take the blade, rotate it backwards so that black mark is now at the rear of the blade, move my dial indicator up and register it again against the black mark. And if there's any misalignment, it's going to show up on that dial indicator there. Now, in this instance, my table saw blade doesn't need any adjusting, but if I did need to adjust it, I would do it by removing the motor housing underneath my table saw to get to the alignment bolt. To remove the motor housing, all I do is take off the 5 screws. There are 2 on the side of my saw and 3 in a storage compartment at the back. Take those off, lift my saw up and remove that cover, which will allow me to access the alignment bolt. Then it's a simple case of identifying whether I need to turn that bolt left or right to make the necessary adjustment to bring my blade into correct alignment. I then do everything up and recheck using my dial indicator before reattaching my motor housing cover. But fortunately for me, I don't need to do that today. And I'm now on to step 3, making sure my fence is parallel. So there are a couple of ways that I can do this. One of the quickest and easiest ways is to unlock the fence, line it up with my miter slot, and just run my hands along it to check it's flush the whole way and make sure there's no points where it's uneven or moved away from that miter slot, as that would mean that my fence is out of parallel and could result in a tapered cut. However, again, because I have my dial indicator, I'm going to run that into my miter slot, register it at the starting end where I'd normally feed my material in from, and then register it at the rear end and check for anything that is out of parallel. As you can see, my fence is not parallel at all, which is not surprising because one of the great things about this saw is that the fence is removable, but the negative to that is it's easy to introduce human error when reattaching it. To adjust this, all I'm going to do is unlock my fence and grab an Allen key that fits the little bolts in the side of my rack and pinion track, undo the bolt and gently adjust it until my dial indicator registers it once more as equal to the opposite end. I'm then going to tighten it up, but this can sometimes cause it to move when you're tightening. So I'm going to recheck it, make any more adjustments, and then lock it into place. Now, because I have a SawStop and it has the active injury mitigation system, there are a couple of extra bits that I would check here that may not necessarily be a feature on some other saws that don't have this built in. For example, I'm going to check that the brake cartridge is actually installed and that it hasn't been removed in transit and that it's correctly fixed in place. Then I can feel comfortable plugging my saw back in and turning it on, and there's a little light indicator just below the switch to my table saw that flashes whilst it's running pre-checks and will go green to let me know that the active injury mitigation system is good to go and ready to use. I have to admit, I really like this because I still find table saws a little bit unnerving, and so having that system, knowing that my fingers are safe should anything bad happen, gives me a bit of peace of mind. And I know that some people feel like it's an unnecessary thing, and that's their decision, that's absolutely fine. But my logic is, even professional footballers drop a pass on occasion. So even if I'm super careful when I'm woodworking, mistakes can still happen. And that's why I'm just more comfortable having that active injury mitigation system in place. With my table saw now calibrated, it's time to test it out. So I'm going to grab a piece of plywood, turn my saw on and run it through, making a simple rip cut. Then, grabbing my digital calipers, I'm going to check both ends of that cut for any major differences. And according to Google, a good tolerance window to look for here is a difference between 0.08 to 0.13 of a millimeter. As you can see on screen, I'm well within that range, so I'm very pleased, and my table saw is now set up and ready to go. And that's it. 3 easy steps I use to make sure my table saw is set up to give me the best results. Thank you so much for watching. And if you think there's something that you would do differently when you're setting up your table saw, or something that I've not quite got right, please let me know down in the comments below. As I've said, I'm absolutely no expert. I'm just a guy who likes to make stuff in his shed, and I know there's always loads more to learn. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like button. And if you really enjoyed it, why not subscribe so you can get notified every time I upload a new video to this channel. Additionally, if your YouTube thirst hasn't quite been quenched yet, why not try out one of these videos on screen now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.